Ahsoka Part 3, Season 1. Interesting episode breakdown. We already kind of touched on a lot of this during the reaction, but that's just like initial thoughts. We've had a couple days now to digest it and think about it, and it's time to do our scene-by-scene breakdown, as per usual. Are you ready? Are you excited to talk about this? Are you as excited about the show as you were last week? Are you feeling hyped still?
I don't know if hyped is the correct word right now. I think I'm enjoying myself. I'm not like, oh my gosh, yeah, like let's go. But I'm having fun. You know, I'm enjoying myself. I'm looking forward to it each week. It's a nice way to kick off an early week, but it's not like, oh my gosh, yeah, let's go. Although I do anticipate that we have yet to see some moments that are on that level.
Yeah, I think we do too. Also, I have to say the release schedule is much better. This is how every show should be. You know what I mean? Like HBO does it with their shows where they're released on Sunday nights, and like that way people can kind of watch it together, as opposed to like Andor or Mandalorian where they come out at midnight East Coast time. It's like not everyone watches it at the same time, which kind of dilutes the hype. So for me, that's a stupid way to do your release schedule.
Well, then you wake up in the morning and it's like spoilers.
Exactly. Like that happened with the Jack Black Lizzo episode. Like Jack Black posted that morning, like after the episode came out. I'm like, oh, it's ruined for me now. Like, thanks, dude.
I can't control what I see.
Yeah, like it's impossible to avoid those things. You know, like to avoid screenshots and stuff, unless you just stay completely off the internet. So the release schedule is definitely much better. I think they're learning, and that's good. It's taken them a little long to do that. But I think we're in good shape. So episode 3, part 3, official description is Hera tangles with New Republic politics while Ahsoka and Sabine Wren voyage to a distant planet. This episode title is Time to Fly. It was written by Dave Filoni and directed by Steph Green. So 2 episodes now directed by Steph Green. And I like the consistency with Filoni writing all these. I think that's good. It's good stuff. I wish that would have been the case for previous Star Wars shows and content. I think Favreau's done a pretty good job with Mando, although last season was a little lackluster in my opinion. Although we've talked about this before, I don't necessarily think that was his fault. But having consistency with Dave Filoni is great, and it's good news for the Star Wars universe if he doesn't get too in his Filoni side of things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think we can go into that too, because like how I voiced before we hopped on the recording side of things, this show feels very cautious right now. It doesn't feel like I'm almost getting the impression that it doesn't feel like it's allowed to be what it really wants to be. It feels really controlled in this strange way, and we can obviously talk about that a little bit more. But as far as this episode goes, God, excuse me. What was your initial impression of this? Did you like it better than the first 2 episodes? Because I found myself liking it a little bit more than even episode 2.
I liked it more than episode 2 for sure. Too short. That's my biggest criticism.
Yeah.
Why are we doing 30-minute episodes? It's been my criticism for a lot of Star Wars shows. 30 minutes is too short. Sorry. Like, take your time. Tell the story as it needs to be told. Don't rush through it. I know there's like, it is the cautious element that you're right about. Like, they're like, oh, let's just put this in here, and then the rest of the story we can tell later on in the season.
Yeah.
We have 8 episodes. You got to be efficient with them. We're not on standard TV, so we can go longer than we need to. Like, you know what I mean? It's not a 30-minute show type of thing. And I don't know, just for me, the typical format of like most TV shows are like 45 minutes to an hour. You know what I mean? If I'm watching Breaking Bad or Succession or True Detective or Sopranos, like have a long episode. You know, we have attention spans for it. Don't be afraid to do that. Tell the correct story. So yeah, my biggest criticism was too short, but it was action packed. Went by like this, but pretty good. I mean, it's kind of what I expect from this show and from Disney Star Wars. So, which is good and bad in some ways. I think it was better than episode 2. So if
I can interject here, sorry, I'm so sorry. If I could interject here for 1 second. We did a live stream, guys. We did a live stream reaction to episode 3 of Ahsoka, Time to Fly. I just want to say thank you real quick to everybody who showed up for that. We had a great time with all you guys. It's a really fun way of watching the episodes and experiencing Star Wars because we're able to talk with people in real time and then get their immediate impressions. So I had a great time on that the other night, and I just wanted to say thank you to all of our followers who joined us for that, because hanging out with you guys is the best, where we can all just talk and share our experiences of Star Wars together. So I just wanted to get that out of the way real quick. We did a live stream. It was really fun, and thank you for attending if you came.
Yeah, and if you guys want to do that again, let us know. If you guys like that format, if you don't like it, let us know. We'll work our schedules around what people like viewing the most and what makes the most sense. I might not be around for the next one. Who knows? Baby might be here. Still not here, so we're just waiting. My birthday is actually tomorrow, so I'm hoping we get a birthday baby. That would be nice. We're recording this on a Friday, so my birthday will be on the Saturday, the 2nd. So hoping I get a birthday baby, but you never know.
The greatest gift of all.
The greatest gift of all. With that being said, let's jump into the episode breakdown. We open up this episode on Ahsoka Tano's shuttle. She's with Huyang. What are we calling him? Is it Huyang?
I call him Huyang. I call him Huyang.
Huyang. I'm going to try to remember that.
Dr. Huyang.
I don't think anyone actually knows how you're supposed to say it. He is doing his General Grievous training with Sabine. Which is
yeah,
fun.
Truth.
She has her little wooden blade out. They're trying different techniques. Ahsoka notices that Sabine derives her skills from Mandalorian equipment, but talking to her about it's not going to be enough to defeat her enemy. After this session, Tano gives her a blast helmet, very similar to A New Hope here, saying that she needs her to see with more than just her eyes, which I thought was an interesting. I think this was like a on purpose, like kind of callback to A New Hope.
Yeah,
we
of course.
even talked about it on the stream a little bit. And she says, "Lower your visor, concentrate." She's doing all this stuff. Whatever. And then, Ahsoka's given her lesson, sweeps the foot out from under her, warns that anger and frustration are quick to give power, but they also unbalance you. So interesting first scene here. What did you think?
I love Huyang with my whole heart. He's amazing. I love everything about that character. I'm so excited that they brought him back. His quippy dialogue with Ahsoka and Sabine is fantastic. Like, I cannot stress how much of a good idea I think it was to bring this character into the mix. I love that they added the fact that he actually trained Jedi for 1,000 years. I thought he was just the lightsaber dude. Like, I was under the impression that he was only the droid that helped construct the lightsabers. I didn't realize that he could help in lightsaber combat. So I think that is a really cool addition to the character. Natasha Bordizio is absolutely jacked. And I would like to applaud her for that. That's very impressive. Yeah.
Nice
arms. Some really, really good arms. And the training scene here reminded me a lot of Kanan training Sabine to use the Darksaber in Star Wars Rebels, because he also trains her in like the poses that they're doing where she's like swings under right or like swings under left. Reminded me a lot of a specific scene in season 3 of Rebels where Kanan is teaching Sabine and they're going 1, 2, 3, 4 with like the different poses. So I think that this scene definitely harkened back to that in Star Wars Rebels, which I appreciated. I liked this scene, but I think this scene is another bit of evidence towards how maybe they don't need to be dragged out that long. I feel like the scene dragged on a little bit longer than it maybe needed to. And so it's like, I'm not picky about that, but I just noticed it was like after like the first 3 minutes of it, I'm like, okay, like, let's just tighten it up here a little bit. It felt like, I feel like the show is repeating a lot of the same scenes. Not that I care about the length of the scene, but if you are repeating the same thing within the moment, I'm like, okay, guys, let's pick it up. Like, let's get back to the main thing. But it did remind me a little bit of kind of like Zorro vibes when he's getting trained.
Mm-hmm.
I really like that.
Good callback.
Fantastic movie. But overall, a good intro, and I think it says the foundation for maybe our expansion and knowledge of how the Force works, which I think is the major takeaway from this episode.
I would agree. That's the most talked about part of this episode so far. We go to Home 1. We see Hera walking through a corridor to attend a meeting with none other than Mon Mothma. We get the Moth Lady back. Chancellor, yeah. She's been in everything now. I mean, we've seen her since Empire Strikes Back was the first appearance of Mon Mothma, different actress, of course, but then we've seen her in Andor, Rogue One. Was she in Rogue One? Mm-hmm. Yep, and now we see her here, and she was in Mando.
She was also
too.
in Well, I don't know about Mando. I don't really remember, but she's also in Rebels and Clone Wars. Like the actress Genevieve O'Reilly has been consistently doing this, I think, since Revenge of the Sith.
Oh yeah, she's great. We love her. We love that. I love seeing consistency among Star Wars characters throughout the different mediums and shows. So that's pretty cool.
And she's also like de-aging every time we see her.
Yeah, she's looking good, dude. So she goes to this conference room. They're investigating the cargo transport that escaped the Denob system. We see First Officer Vic Hawkins is warning her that Hamato Ziono, I don't know if I'm saying that right, Ziono, I don't know what it says, is one of the senators present. They're all in the meeting with the holo
Can I
projectors.
interject
He's kind
a
of
little
he's kind of
niche thing
talking
here?
smack to Hera a little bit. Yeah, sure, go.
Yeah, so this character, this senator, is the father of a very niche animated series called Star Wars Resistance. He's the father of the main character in an animated show called Star Wars Resistance. It's very much like a kid show. Like, that is actually
Yes.
a kid show. So it's a pretty niche takeaway, but he's supposed to be the father of the main character in Star Wars Resistance.
Got it. Okay, that's a nice little tidbit.
Yep. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
So he's talking shit to Hera. He's being kind of a jerk. Doesn't want to approve her little mission. He's calling her out for only wanting to go find Thrawn because of Ezra. We see... Oh, and Mothma asks how Hera's son Jason's doing. Jason with a C and an E-N. Jason Syndulla with the weird hair that you don't like.
The carrot boy.
Hera says her son is playing with Chopper. Let's see. Oh, Mothma says that it's her understanding that loyalists are arrested and the facility is shut down. Syndulla confirms this is the case. This is an interesting little like politics scene, which I think is cool. Like we kind of see how things work in the New Republic. Like they're having their little conferences and talking about, what to do here.
Very George Lucas-y in that way.
Yes, very much so. In that this set was very much George Lucas-y in that regard, reminded me of A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, that sort of thing, in the way the set design was, which I think there's been a lot of attention to detail in that. I mean, it's definitely on purpose from Dave Filoni, which is cool. This guy's like, hey, we're not going to use Republic forces to go find your friend, okay? That's stupid, and we're going to shoot down that request.
And then she's like, hey, where were you?
Yeah. Where were you? Where were you when the West Wall fell? Where was Gondor when the West Wall fell?
Where was Gondor and
Where was Gondor when Syndulla, Hera says the senators that Thrawn is not their typical Imperial officer. They serve the people of Maywood says that he and the senators serve the people of the New Republic. They don't want any more conflict, blah, blah, blah. Hera's like, hey, Thrawn returning could change everything. We want to be careful here. They're kind of dismissive, and Mon Mothma's like, hey, give us a moment, and we want to talk this all through. So after she exits, she's joined by Jason and Chopper. Jason asks his mother if it's true that Aunt Sabine is going to be a Jedi. And he's like, I want to be a Jedi. And Hera touches his shoulder and reassures him that she knows that. Now, does Jason join Luke Skywalker's Academy of Dead Cadets? Or like, what happens here?
Of Dead Jedi? I have no idea. I mean, we don't even know if the kid's Force sensitive himself, but I think that was more so a nod to like Kanan. Although I do find it really weird that nobody's mentioned Kanan at this point.
That is weird. If we're doing like a season,
strange.
Yeah. I mean, it makes no difference to me. I haven't watched the whole show, but you're right. I mean, given all the connections to the show, the Rebels show, you'd think they would say something.
Well, first of all, Kanan started Sabine's training, so I feel like a discussion on him is at least warranted, or maybe like a nod to Kanan never finished her training either. Like he taught her some things, but it never came to fruition. Much like how Anakin never got to finish Ahsoka's training, so they have that in common.
Yeah.
Jason's her kid. She could have said something like, you remind me of your father, or something like that.
Yeah.
Like,
You're right.
It's just so strange that this is more of a Rebels connective show as opposed to a Ahsoka show, in my opinion, thus far. And so to not have any, like, Kanan Easter egg is pretty weird to me. Nevertheless, Carrot Boy is back in Kanan lives on in his son Jason. I'm not crazy about the green hair. I'm kind of hoping that in a later episode
It's a
they're
small
like,
complaint.
Aunt Sabine has dyed your hair again. Like, I'm kind
I
of
just
hoping.
find it weird that they happen to have a human looking kid.
No,
Like,
dude,
kind of
I
weird.
like how I expressed on the live stream. How did this work? An alien has sex with
No
a
idea.
human, and then the kid looks human. There's no alien genes in the kid. I mean, do you remember the clone Cut LaQuaine, and he marries a Twi'lek, and then their kids are like Twi'lek human.
Oh yeah, good.
Do you remember
He's
that?
the farmer guy, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and he
Yeah.
marries the Twi'lek, and then they have like these weird looking kids that look alien. They look like a mix of both their parents, and then Jason's just this perfectly human kid. Like,
Yeah.
I know that seems like
it
a
is
tiny.
weird.
I know that seems like a tiny complaint, but I just think that they went a really boring route. I think
agree,
creatively,
boring.
it's
He
just
has
really
green hair.
boring.
It's like whatever. Yeah.
It's like, let's do the
I'm
laziest
not bananas
version.
about it either, but yeah, I think
It's
that
a
was more
tiny
just like,
complaint,
hey,
yeah.
he's here. He was in Rebels. Like, here, look
Yeah.
at this character from Rebels.
But I don't know if he gets
Meanwhile-
killed at the academy. I guess we'll find out.
Let's hope so. No, I'm just kidding. Meanwhile, we see Ahsoka Tano complimenting Sabine for being a fast learner. Sabine says she can handle weapons, but she struggles with the rest of it. Sabine asks Ahsoka if she could expedite her training. Ahsoka's like, "Hey, it doesn't work like that, you stupid idiot." And then Sabine's like, "Well, I can't feel the Force the same way you do." And Ahsoka says the Force resides in all living things. I thought the delivery here was a little weird when she's like, it was just so like, I am a prophet, and this is how things. She's like, the whole show so far, it seems like Ahsoka's just looking down on Sabine. Like, I'm better than you, and I know more than you. And that's kind
Yeah.
of like, I don't know, weird to me. Like,
There's so much debate around Rosario's take on Ahsoka. On the one hand, she's not going to be happy-go-lucky because her life has been filled with trauma, right? She's had a lot of bad experiences, and that's not going to shape you to be this go-lucky, happy person that you were when you were 16. At the same time, in moments, like, she's emoted a few times, but I feel like she is just a little robotic. And when Mon Mothma showed up in the hologram, like talking to Hera, she expressed such warmth and kindness. And the core of Ahsoka's character is still very warm and kind, but I'm not really getting that notion from her at all. It's like there doesn't feel like there's anything connecting her to her past versions of herself. Like, you're still different people as you go through life. You change and you evolve. You're not the same person that you were at 16 when you're 45 or 50 or 70 years old. I get that, but there doesn't feel like there's anything connecting. Like, usually you can see a string throughout your life and the elements of yourself, but she just feels tight, like wound.
yeah, I'm not 100% invested in the character. I'm not invested in a lot of these characters, to be honest. It might be one of my complaints, and I know I'm going to get flack for this. People are going to get mad at me and
I don't blame
some
you.
excuse for why I should love it so much. But everyone seems a little flat to me. I don't really 100% get everyone's motivations yet. The only one that's kind of stuck out to me, but I still can't make a solid opinion yet because we haven't seen enough of them, is Baylan and Shin. They, to me, seem like interesting. Shin, we haven't heard talk very much. Her presence is good on the screen. Baylan's presence is great. We just haven't had much dialogue from him. But he stands out a bit more to me. Shin stands out a bit more to me. Everyone
Mira.
else just seems a little flat. And Ahsoka kind of feels the same. Wait a minute, it doesn't really feel like the character that I've watched in Clone Wars, for example. And I don't know why that is. Maybe it's the writing, maybe it's the acting, maybe it's both. But these scenes here, with her talking to Sabine when they're talking about the Force and all this stuff, I don't see Ahsoka, the Ahsoka character that I'm familiar with, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you see, I see flashes of Ahsoka. Like in the first 2 episodes, I expressed that I see Ahsoka in some of these scenes, but they're very few and in between. It's not consistent enough to the point where I really believe I'm watching the character. They have flashes of moments where they feel like the characters, but none of the interpretations feel steady, if that makes sense. It doesn't feel like there's drawing, there's a connection from scene to scene. And I just feel like in these conversations that Sabine and Ahsoka have one-on-one, that's where it's most prominent.
Yeah.
So
Also, the makeup's good, so like that does
Yeah.
help. Like they've done a really good job with that, and she does. We talked about this in our last episode. She does look a bit more like Ahsoka. I don't know. It's the attitude. It's the line delivery. There's not as much of a kindness. I feel like Ahsoka has a kindness to her. She seems a little like, I don't know, jaded,
Standoffish?
in this. Standoffish. Yeah, that's a good word to describe it. Like a little standoffish. I think I even felt her maybe a little bit more as Ahsoka in Mando when we saw her for the first time. You know, or
When she's
we saw
talking to
her
Luke.
Talking to Luke. Yeah.
Yeah.
When we saw her talking to Luke. I'm like, okay, I can, but I don't feel that as much here. So, yeah, I don't know. That's just an observation that I have.
she seemed very warm around Luke. Like lukewarm. She was lukewarm around Luke. I walked right into that one. Sorry.
Good one, Liz.
Sorry, I realized what I was saying. She was lukewarm. But yeah, she definitely has more of her kindness was there in her conversation with Luke. Like she's just very kind to him. And with Sabine, I don't like you.
Not.
Yeah.
And I've discovered this last time. I guess we're not, like, the whole apprentice thing is new to everybody, but I'm still kind of confused by that. Her attitude towards Sabine just seems, there's a weird vibe, and they haven't really addressed that. So I don't know. Just a little observation from us. Where did we leave off? Oh, Huyang is talking about how few Mandalorians have become Jedi. Ahsoka says Ren doesn't need to be a Jedi. She just needs to be herself. Huyang remarks that Ahsoka comes from a long line of non-traditional Jedi, and she would fit right in. I kind of like this line. This is cool because then you think about Ahsoka coming from Anakin, coming from Obi-Wan, coming from Qui-Gon, coming from Dooku, coming from Yoda. You know, so I think that was a well thought out line there. Sabine comes to the cockpit, joins the Holo conference with Hera. Hera says that she regrets that neither her nor the New Republic Defense Fleet will be able to join them. She explains that the Senate committee refused to approve the mission. Before she can explain, the transmission's cut off, and Huyang informs the others that they have entered the Denob system, whatever, and their transmissions are being jammed. Huyang takes the ship out of hyperspace at a significant distance from the planet, and as per Jedi mission protocol for an unknown situation, when Sabine asks, Hera explains this is part of Huyang's programming.
So real quick,
Yeah.
I didn't mention two things. We already got past the scene where she has the little, I'm going to move the cup with the Force.
Oh, the cup. Yep.
Yeah. So we got past that, and then they had their little conversation on the Force. I think what this episode did is it really changed the audience's perception of how the Force works. And how some people are a little bit more in tune with it, kind of like a faith life. Like you're a little bit more in tune with religion or like your different experiences of it. And like the more in tune you are with the Force, the better you can wield it. And some people are just more naturally gifted towards it than others. So like Anakin versus Sabine. Anakin's obviously a lot more in tune with the Force than Sabine. But like any skill, you have to train yourself to be disciplined and to wield it effectively. There's been a lot of debate on whether or not Sabine's going to end up being a Force-sensitive character. I personally would like to see her...
A Force user, I think,
Force
is a better
user.
word. Yes.
Okay, a Force user. That's fair. I really don't like the idea of Sabine being a Jedi. At all. I don't like that idea. I'm totally open to the idea that she's somebody who has learned how to use the Force in a different way than a Jedi, kind of like Chirrut from Rogue One. You know how he's really good at fighting, and you can tell he's using the Force. Yeah, I love that character. He's not a Jedi, but he's learned to use the Force in a way that works best for him. And so I'd like to see that kind of arc with Sabine. But again, I'm not really crazy about the idea of her becoming a Jedi because I feel like it has just been so run into the ground and we've seen it a million times that it's not exactly new. And it's very predictable, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I'd have to see how they write it, but it's just not original, and I'm not into that idea. Like, I would love it. I would love it so much if she trained and trained and trained, and she just couldn't wield the Force. That doesn't mean that she sucks as a person, that she can't wield the Force, but she would have to accept that that's just not a part of her. And I would find that to be a much more interesting arc.
Yeah, I also just find that it distracts from Ahsoka, which is the name of the show. And that's one thing I've been struggling with in these last 3 episodes is like everyone's been saying it's Rebels season 5 or whatever, or is it season 6? I don't know.
5.
I don't know. I haven't watched Rebels all the way through. and I'm still enjoying the show because I'm watching it as your average person. But I just like now are we gonna make this the Sabine becoming a Jedi show, or like
Yeah.
I just feel like we haven't touched on Ahsoka enough. Like I think the opening scene to the show was great. You introduce the bad guys, it automatically drives some kind of plot forward. I think it would have been nice if we like at least went to Ahsoka by herself for a little bit, take some time, explore what she's been doing, who is she, what's going on. You know what I mean? And then like maybe you introduce these relationships later on. It just feels like this is all moving very quickly. Like and then also I don't know what's going on. Why was Ahsoka like mad at her? It seemed like she was mad at her or something in the first 2 episodes. And everyone's like, well, you should train her, and like this is, you should take her as the apprentice. And I just don't feel like that has been fleshed out enough, and I don't feel like we know enough who Ahsoka is in this moment to to understand what is influencing her decisions, if that makes sense.
Especially because half the audience of this show already knows Ahsoka coming into the series, but for the newcomers, you're not really laying any groundwork for who she's been. And you don't have
not
to
even
give
just that though, dude. It's like what's she been up to? It's been a long time period, right? Like between Rebels and this, what would we do the math on? Like 5 or 6
I honestly
years,
thought that they
like
were gonna give her more of her whole identity in Rebels is that she's Fulcrum. And she's secretly helping the Rebel Alliance underneath the alias of Fulcrum. And nobody in the Alliance knows who Fulcrum is, save for like maybe a couple people. So it's that was kind of her identity in Rebels until she came into the light in season 3, and then everybody's like, okay, she's alive, or season 2 or whatever. I don't know. But I just feel like there's no structure that was built for the newcomers as to who she is in this moment. Like we just kind of jumped off of a thread in Rebels season 4 and just went with it and assumed that the audience had all this knowledge. And you don't have to answer everything about her, but you have to give us a better idea of who she is. At least at this point in time.
Everyone's been disagreeing with me and other, people who have mentioned the same thing, which is like, well, you don't need to have watched all the other shows to get this. And I'm like, well, you kind of do. In order to like get the full impact of it, like even me, if I hadn't watched Clone Wars, dude, I'd probably be pretty lost on like who she is. I mean, yes, we've seen her in Mando. Yes, we've seen her in Book of Boba Fett, but briefly and not enough to really develop her motivations and stuff. So, yeah, I just think that's been a lacking element. Maybe it would have been good to do something like they did with Obi-Wan, like at the very beginning of that show, they did a really cool recap. It might have been worth doing something like that for Ahsoka, just to refresh people as to who she is. She was Anakin's apprentice, right? And maybe it's not that kind of show. Maybe it's just the kind of show that they're only doing this for real, true Star Wars fans. And if that's the case, fine, do your thing. I just think you're missing out on some viewers if you do that, and like a really cool character. But hey, that's just me.
I think that's a valid point to make. I don't think that warrants criticism, but I think it's extremely valid to bring that up.
Yeah.
Because you have to keep the newcomers in mind.
Yes, you do. Moving on here. Okay. Hewing reports that the last scan indicates the runaway transport was orbiting the far side of Cetos. However, he also reports a second object with an unknown signature. Just as this happens, the alarm rings. 6 starfighters, including Shin and Merrick, converge on Ahsoka's shuttle. Hewing identifies them as hostiles. Hera sends Sabine to man the ship's tail gun. Also very similar to A New Hope here. Shin sends starfighters 2 and 3 to shadow at Ahsoka's ship. We have this big firefight happening here. As our dad wanted to point out, we have these ships here that I guess, in his opinion, looks a lot like Grumman Hellcats from World War II.
Or P-47s.
Or P-47s. Which, hey, maybe that's where Filoni got some influence from. But cool design here. Like, this is where the episode really picks up. We have this really cool firefight happening.
Extremely Clone Warsy.
Pretty Clone Warsy. We also have, like prequel-y type of vibes. I think with Shin, with her, this is where the fun begins thing on.
The little connector, the comm.
She's being a mommy. She's badass. Mommy. I think she's a pretty cool villain. Merrick is cool. And there's just the effects here, like as they converge on them, there's some good tension built. It felt very Star Warsy as she tells him to go man the tail gun. Some nice callbacks to like A New Hope type of, kind of an homage to that kind of.
There's also just sorry, go ahead, finish.
I was just gonna say it's also just really, really good music and cinematography.
Yeah, I was. This whole sequence is Sabine and Ahsoka learn how to team up again. Like that was the general overview of the scene to kind of show that the barriers are breaking down a little bit, and it's like, hey, stop trying to teach me lessons all the time, and let's like work together. Let's accomplish something. And then we had a couple moments where Ahsoka was being supportive, and she's like, yeah, good shot, all that good stuff. So it was nice to see some camaraderie and banter happening. Because ultimately, I think that's a big core part of Star Wars, as well as the quippy banter and interactions and the fun dialogue. And up until this point, we haven't seen anything like that, like with Ahsoka and Sabine in a scenario such as this. So that was really great. Just the way this whole fight panned out, it is very prequel-y, but it just was something straight out of Clone Wars to me, especially as you get into the next scene, which is actually something straight out of Clone Wars. But I think my prequel loving heart was... this was the best sequence, in my opinion, in the whole episode. Like, this was the standout.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Definitely in this episode. Well, like, of the last 3 episodes, too. A pretty good highlight of the show. Like, well done fight sequence. You can tell they put a lot of budget towards this, which was cool. Hewing manages to gain sight of the unidentified object, which he says is a hyperspace ring, as we were correct in assuming that's kind of what it was. That's exactly what it looked like. Shin informs Morgan that the intruders are approaching the Eye of Sion, and Morgan is disappointed with Shin for letting the intruders get so far, but says she will deal with them. She tells Shin and the starfighters to steer clear and orders the pilot droids to prepare the turbo lasers. Oh no, not the turbo lasers.
Not the turbo lasers! Turbo test.
Meanwhile, Shin tells Merrick to form up her wing and wait for a signal. The fighters break off. Hewing tells Hera to keep the ship steady while he attempts to run the scan on the Eye of Sion. When the navigator droid informs Elsbeth that the turbo lasers are ready, she orders them to shoot at Ahsoka's ship. She dodges the fire. Sabine enters the cockpit, and Ahsoka mans the deflector shields, where Hewing conducts a scan of the hyperspace ring. Hewing tells Ahsoka to fly the ship closer, and Shin is warning that the deflectors are at 10%. Really good, fun sequence here as they get hit, and Ahsoka now exits the starship in her custom spacesuit thingy. And takes
Who customized that for her?
Yeah, I know, right? It must have been a tall order. That's got to be expensive, dude. It's a bespoke spacesuit. It's expensive. So we see Merrick and Shin spot her on the wing of the shuttle and start shooting at her. Ahsoka jumps up in the air in this. I've watched the sequence a couple times now. It just looks a little awkward the way she's like, ooh, like flipping around, and like also there's gravity. So like, how does she land? If you jumped like that in space, you'd probably just float off into the distance, unless she has some kind of secret special spacesuit, which wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, I don't doubt that. I'm not going to lie to you, dude. I really enjoyed this sequence where she was jumping around the ship, because Clone Wars has done this multiple times, as has Star Wars Rebels. Like, they did it with Anakin and Ahsoka jumping off of a Star Cruiser in space to fight the droids or ships, I can't remember. Plo Koon did it really early on in season 1 of Clone Wars, and then Ezra Bridger does it in season 4 of Rebels. So I feel like it was an homage to all of those scenes that preceded it. So I really enjoyed it. Again, Clone Wars prequel vibes. I had a lot of fun with it. I love those callbacks that create the connective tissue throughout the series for me. So I had a lot of fun with it. Backtracking just a little bit, when Shin is talking to Marek. What is it, Merrick or Marek? I gotta figure this out right now. I have Marek. Why do I want to say Merrick?
Marek. I don't know. Just say Marek. It's easier.
Marek. I think it's Marek. I'm pretty sure it's Marek. When he goes, as you wish.
Yeah.
Everybody took that one clip and they were comparing it. Did you see this? They were comparing it to a scene from The Force Unleashed.
Yeah,
where Starkiller says
Starkiller. Yeah.
The exact same thing. Now, don't get me wrong. I would love it if this was a version of Starkiller. But I just think it's funny how somebody's just taking like one line that Starkiller says and then comparing it to this one line that Mark says. And I'm like, okay, that's a bit of a stretch. However, I would really love if they went in that direction because I think it's cool and it's unique and it's new, and it would be kind of boring if it was just another nobody, in my opinion. At least for this character, because they shrouded him in so much mystery that to not give him a reveal would maybe feel a little cheap, in my opinion. Not saying that all these like mercenaries have to have this massive identity for Star Wars to be successful. That's not at all what I'm saying. I'm just saying it would be fun if it actually was a reveal to look forward to, just because they've given us absolutely nothing on him.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's my
fair.
spiel.
That's a fair thing to say. I'm sure it will end up being somebody. Although, honestly, I wouldn't care if it's just a guy an Inquisitor who happened to survive, and he's still hanging around and wants to be evil still. I don't know. Like,
Silent
that
but
wouldn't bother
deadly.
me that much. You know,
It's not make or
and
break.
Maybe it
It
is
would just be
Starkiller.
cool.
I don't know. Did anyone look at the credits? Was Sam Witwer in this one too? Do we know?
So the person, I think it's somebody. I don't think it's Sam Witwer as the guy. I think it's like a completely different like stunt double or something. Like there's a person in the costume in the credits. Somebody called it out. I can't remember who did. I saw it going around on TikTok. I don't remember the actor who's actually like in the suit, but Sam is a voice on the show. And I don't know, Sam Witwer does a lot of voice acting for a lot of different Star Wars projects. So who's to say? I think it would be fun, but it won't ruin the show for me. I just think it's like maybe a missed opportunity if they don't make it a reveal because they've just given us so little. But again, it's not going to destroy the show for me if they don't.
I'm not going to worry about it too much until he reveals himself. I just think he's cool. It looks like a medieval knight with his cool mask. And the baddies in this are cool. And Huang's the man. We love Huang. He's like the best droid ever.
Voice acting from David Tennant is
so
amazing.
good. Like his diction
dude.
is incredible. The way his diction and the way he speaks is so good.
He's so amazing.
Now we
That's
get
my
to
boy.
one of the cool parts, really cool parts of the episode as well, where Ahsoka goes inside the ship before they can shoot her, and they start leading them, their pursuers, through the stormy clouds of Cedos. They encounter a big pod of Purgil. I don't know how you say that. The big space whales.
Space whales.
And fly around them. And they're like flying through them and around them. And they're using the big beasts to make it harder for the pursuers to catch them. They fly over the Red Forest and land in a clearing here. They are then waiting for the enemy starfighters to fly above them. And then Sabine says she hasn't seen Purgil since the day Ezra Bridger disappeared. So I have some questions here. Like, this was cool and like great effects and stuff. Like really cool fight scene. The sound design of the blasters I thought was really cool. So the Purgil, whatever. If you're not a regular Star Wars fan or like a really serious Star Wars fan, this would be a little confusing. They're big space whales, right? And this is kind of what took Ezra and Thrawn away, from what I understand. It's kind of why they're in a totally different galaxy. So they just live in the space or whatever, and like they were on this planet for what reason? Like, is this their planet where they live? I'm kind of confused by that.
I can't actually answer that. I don't know the answer to that. I mean, when the Purgil were introduced in Star Wars Rebels, they were introduced as creatures that a lot of people lost their lives to in space because ships would crash into them, and they're like this big hazard. Like there's this whole episode in Star Wars Rebels where Hera's like, I hate these things because my friends have died because of them. And there's a whole conversation around it. And Ezra's like, well, maybe you don't understand them. And then he is able to connect to the Force. He's able to connect to them through the Force and like have this relationship with them. So at the end of Star Wars Rebels, Ezra kind of harnesses the power of the Purgil to launch him. Yeah, the power of the Purgil to launch himself and Thrawn into another galaxy so that Lothal is safe.
So they can fly at hyperspace.
Yeah,
speeds
they travel through hyperspace. They established this in Ahsoka, but I think it's this episode where Huang says that they can travel through hyperspace lanes that the Jedi mapped out. So it was
why were they
something
on this
like,
planet then? I was kind of confused by that.
why did they land on Cedos?
Like, why were they in the planet? Yeah, like in the atmosphere there.
I just think that they went down to the atmosphere to try and hide and get away from them, and then they just ran into the Purgil. Because I think the Purgil exists on that planet. I think that they're just passing through that planet, and Morgan Elsbeth knows that. And so she's like, hey, we're going to harness them because we know they're around this planet into the hyperspace ring so we can go. Because if you remember, Baylan is like standing on the ground and he looks up and he sees them. And
right.
I think
I remember
that's
that now.
I think that's
You're
why.
right. Okay, that makes more sense. I get that now. Huang tells Ahsoka and Sabine that the enemy structure is still under construction. He explains that there are 6 hyperdrives in place, with the final being installed. Sabine concludes that the structure is a hyperspace ring, and Huang remarks that he's never seen a ring being built on this scale before. Based on the ship's engines and configuration, he estimates it would be capable of a hyperspace jump of astonishing speed and distance. When Ahsoka asks if a hyperdrive ring like that could travel to another galaxy, he says theoretically it would if you knew the coordinates and navigation. He recalls that the Jedi Archive spoke of intergalactic hyperspace lanes between the galaxies, which he used to follow the migration paths of Purgil. Okay, you're right. Yeah, he did explain this. I remember this now. Meanwhile, we see Balin assembling a task force of HK-87 assassin droids and scout guards. He orders them to hunt down the Jedi who have taken refuge in the forest. And then the episode just ends. It just kind of ends. Which, like, I don't know. You just ramped up, had a cool scene, and we have some momentum going. And then it's just, nah, wait till next week. We'll keep it 30 minutes. You could have done, dude, another 15 minutes is such a long time. You could have done another 15 minutes easy. And I don't know why you didn't. Like, there could have been a better wrap-up to this, is all I'm saying. Like, Balin's awesome. It ends with him commanding the screen. He's like, go get them. And then it just, like, this was one of the quickest episodes I've ever seen of Star Wars. And that's a good thing because it means that it was engaging and like well put together, but then it just ended abruptly, which I thought was just kind of jarring, I guess.
I feel like it could have just used a few tiny quick fixes. Like I mentioned on our live stream, have Balin and Ahsoka sense each other in the Force. And then then have Balin say, hey, you need to go get them. You know, but it just needed a tiny little moment to pull it all together to make you feel like the episode was completed and you were ready for next week. I really felt like they cut me off in the middle, and that was frustrating. And I think that they could have added a couple little things to help tighten it up. But I mean, next week for sure, we're getting those 2 lightsaber battles. We're going to get the one in the forest, and then we're probably going to get the one where Ahsoka is fighting Balin in the little map area. I guarantee both of those are coming next week. And then maybe we get Marek's identity.
Yeah, we'll be halfway through the season at that point.
Oh my God. It's the 4th episode next week.
Yeah.
Man, they were really limiting themselves.
Dude, I just wish we had more episodes. Like all these Star Wars shows, there's only 8. Like I don't get that. I don't get why can't we have 12? Why can't we have 15?
Dude, if they find Ezra at the end of the season, I almost feel like it's gonna be rushed. You know, like I almost feel like it's gonna be this. Well, we found him. I know, or maybe they'll cut it off, and we'll have to wait till next season to find out whether or not they find Ezra. But I feel like at this rate, at the pace they're going, they're moving forward so fast. Where it's like, is this gonna feel like an earned thing, or is this just gonna feel?
Well, especially when you do a 2-episode premiere, you know what I mean? Now we're only going over 7 weeks instead of 8 weeks. Like what are most TV shows now? 10 episodes if you're doing something like that? Like just 10. Like add a couple more episodes. If we're going to have really short ones like this, fine, but let's make sure that we have enough runway to tell the rest of the story. So those are my biggest complaints, honestly, with not just this, but Star Wars in general. The short episodes are killing me, and the short seasons are killing me. Like it doesn't make any sense. If Star Wars was still an independent property, not owned by Disney, if it's still a Lucasfilm thing, and this was 30 years ago, and they were going to do a Star Wars TV show, and one of the like ABC, there's no streaming platforms, and ABC is one of the major networks, and they're like, hey, we're only going to order 8 episodes, and you're constrained by that, and also you don't have a massive budget because you're Lucasfilm, you don't have the Disney budget. All right, maybe I understand that, but we have Disney. There shouldn't be a limited budget for this. This is one of your most valuable properties that you have is Star Wars, and we can't just make them longer episodes with more episodes. Like, I don't know. That doesn't really make sense to me.
That's where I struggle because they have the resources. Yeah, and everybody knows that they have the resources, and it's just it all comes back to you're not using your resources effectively. You're not putting enough thought into this on how to utilize it to make the best possible project. So I definitely share that frustration with you. And I think it's valid. And it makes me feel a little cheated because if you're going to give me less, give me more. Limited series exist. Most limited series that I've watched, at least like in the 70s, 80s, 90s, even early 2000s. They were limited series, but they were an hour each. Like,
Yeah.
isn't Lonesome Dove a limited series? Isn't that what that is?
Great show.
Like,
Awesome show.
Those all feel like mini movies.
Yeah,
They're
it does.
so good. It's so, so good. So it's like, yeah, you can give me less, but give me more within the less. And I don't feel like there's an even balance. It's like, okay, we're going to give you less, but we're also going to give you shorter run times. And they don't really feel complete. It'd be really great if every episode of Ahsoka was 1 hour, making it an 8-hour show. I would not mind that at all. And then you have more opportunity to do what you want.
Yeah, I agree. I think we just need a little bit more. And like that was Kenobi's biggest issue. We needed more. Like more.
Yep.
Because what they did was so obvious. You took a movie and you split it up and you just made it fit. And instead of rewriting it and going, let's start from scratch and let's make this the best thing ever, they relied too heavily on the original script, it looked like. And you relied on your talent of Ewan McGregor, who can never do anything wrong. I love him. And Hayden Christensen and the Vader stuff. And then all the stuff in between was like, okay, did we think about this or did you just put it on here because it was the first idea people came up with?
It literally felt like a first draft. That whole show felt like a first draft. A first draft fan film. Like a poorly made fan film.
It could have been so good. And there's elements of that show that are just awesome. Like Vader's perfect in that show. I think it's flawless. The fights between him and Obi-Wan, pretty good. The last one is like one of my favorite Star Wars. It's made me feel like I did when I was a kid in the theater, you know. And people always say this. They go, "You can't duplicate that feeling when you were a kid." Like, yes, you can, dude. Yes, you absolutely can. You just have to like put some love and care into it. And I think Disney just looks at some of these things as like money grabs, and they're not like looking at it through an artistic eye. Now, it's not to say I'm not enjoying the show. I'm enjoying the show, but like this one just ended like so quickly. And I wonder what other people are thinking too. Like, I don't know that it's blowing the ratings out of the water. You know what I mean?
I think it's doing not well, actually. I don't think the ratings are doing super good.
Which wouldn't surprise me. Like they've marketed the hell out of this, but you haven't given enough context to your average person. If people are seeing these billboards, they're seeing commercials for it, all right, that it looks cool. Looks like lightsaber fights. The promotions have been great, in my opinion. The marketing's been really good. But now you're watching the show and you're like, I don't have the context here. Like, what's...
Well, also, they've burnt people out with their last 3 shows. Like, the hype was so high for Kenobi, dude. It had every reason to succeed. And then it came out and it was mid at best. You know, it had really good moments in it, but it didn't blow people out of the water. I don't know what the heck Book of Boba Fett was. The one episode in that show that got me excited and crying was about Cad Bane and Luke Skywalker and had nothing to do with Boba Fett. And that was the last time I actually felt like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then Boba Fett fell off the face of the planet. Lord knows what happened with Mandalorian season 3. I think people are tired, and I don't think they want to invest in something that they're like, I don't really think that this is going to give me the feeling. And I think that might be a big chunk of why the ratings are probably not good. Because people are tired and they just don't want to give energy to it. And also, Ahsoka only draws in the audience that already knows her. And so you really got to give a solid foundation. And I am enjoying the show a lot, but I don't think that they set her up in the best possible way that they could have. Or at least that's just my feeling on it.
Yeah. I don't think they've set it up the best possible way either. Look, I'm still enjoying the show. I just, in my opinion, if we compare this to any other really good TV show, where does it stand? Not very high.
Not very high.
That's all I'm saying. I'm entertaining it because I like Star Wars, and like, if you're gonna give me more Star Wars, give me more Star Wars. But if we're comparing it to the best of the best TV shows ever, is it even in the top 50? Probably not. And maybe that's not what they're going for, which is, whatever, fine. But look, all in all, for like to stick to this episode, I thought it was good. Just way too short. It flew by so quickly. And it just doesn't, like, we know what's coming up next week. I don't know, the flow of a lot of these Star Wars shows is a little weird, like where they decide to end episodes. it doesn't feel like there's an A plot, B plot, C plot that are still connected to the overall D plot of the season. You know what I mean?
Within the episode, you have like an overarching plot, but there are like 3 different plots within the episode, but they all come back together at the end.
Yeah. Kind of, yeah. I mean, and you can't do that with a 30-minute episode. It'd be too hard, especially with a show like this. But moving on, what's your rating for this episode?
I don't even remember what I ranked the episode last week, but I would probably definitely rank the episode last week, or at least the second part. So I'd rank episode 2 maybe a little bit lower than I initially rated it, and maybe episode 3 a little bit higher. So let's just say episode 2 last week is like a 7.2. This was probably like a 7.5, a 7.6. You know, good. I really enjoyed it.
I think I'm gonna stick it. Yeah, it was good. I'm around the same area. Whatever I rated it on the stream, I'd say I'd probably continue with that. The only reason I'm taking off points is the length of it. But I'm interested to see what happens next week. You know, it just didn't feel like satisfying at the end. You know, when you're finished with the show, you got to be like, okay.
Like, okay, you know? I know where we're going. That's
this
good.
one had a lot of momentum that it built, and then it just stopped at the top, and you're like, oh, okay. All right. So should we do viewer questions or viewer thoughts?
Sure, let's do it. Yeah, let's do it. So wait, let me pull up the one email that we have, and then you can pull up the community page real quick.
Okay.
Okay. I'm gonna start. Okay.
Okay.
So we have Damien's back. Damien says, with the latest episode of the Ahsoka show, are we going to see Ezra return with the crew of the Ghost? And is it possible that the New Republic will have a full-fledged battle between themselves and the Empire in the next episode? I think they're definitely building up. This show is definitely building up to another all-out war. And that's going to be like they've already been reiterating this a couple times where Hera's like, hey, this really powerful admiral that we were fighting a number of years ago is coming back. And if he comes back, there's going to be a war again. And they even mentioned this in The Mandalorian season 3 when Giancarlo Esposito is talking to the evil council of evil Empire people. If you remember that in Mando season 3, they talk about Thrawn's return in that scene. So I think that there's going to be another war breakout 100%. I don't really know how quickly we're going to find Ezra because I feel like the show is moving really, really fast that I don't know if we're going to get to a point where it's going to be very satisfying when we find Ezra. But the show is still kind of early, but I think next week we'll have a pretty good idea of where we're headed and how fast things are going to start to unravel. So I guess we're going to have to see, but I think, yes, there's going to be another war. I think Ezra will get back with the Ghost crew, but I don't know how quickly that's going to happen. So, yet to see, but thank you for the question, Damien.
Thank you for the question, Damien. Edward the Giant says, I personally think this was a brilliant decision by Dave. George always said that the Force is within, I guess he's talking about that scene between Ahsoka and Sabine. The Force is within every sentient living being, and that adds to Nick Gillard's level system, which he said the younglings had a level 1, and Anakin and Obi-Wan had level 7, Palpatine and Yoda level 9. However, when Anakin joined the dark side, he jumped 2 levels. This is what I personally use to rank Force users of any kind. I presume Sabine, as most of the people in Star Wars, have a 0.5 level. By the way, Nick Gillard is the stunt coordinator of the prequel. All the fights on these movies are great due to him. Oh, that's cool. That's interesting thoughts here. Yeah, that makes sense to me. I don't know. I didn't know why that was so controversial with people. Like, I guess maybe I was just confused, but I did some research on it afterwards, and it does look like George Lucas was like, yeah, everyone has the Force in them. It's just some people have more talent than others. And that's a good ranking system. The Nick Gillard guy, I mean, if he's the fight coordinator, we need him more in Star Wars stuff.
Yeah, why don't they bring him back? That's weird, actually.
I don't know, dude. Those prequel fights are like, I was blown away by that stuff. And we haven't really seen something since. I mean, the ones in Kenobi were pretty good. The last fight between him and Vader I thought was pretty cool. The beginning scene here was pretty cool. I didn't love the fight scene between Shin and Sabine. I thought that was
very staged.
Yeah, it didn't flow, I guess. Like, I've seen people on YouTube doing better coordinated fight scenes that flow really well, you know. But that's cool. I mean, that's an interesting comment. I don't have a problem with any of the Force stuff here, so I don't care.
No,
like,
I don't have a problem with it either.
I don't care.
I don't have a problem with it either. I just think it's interesting. It's like, okay, then what separates a Jedi from everybody else? You know, that would be my main question as to like
Their ability to harness the Force and understand it. It's like becoming a monk or something, you know? You're one with the universe, one with yourself, meditation, all that stuff.
or like being a Buddhist or something.
Yeah, that's the difference. Because honestly, if only, you have to have your special midichlorians to become a Jedi. To me, it's like, nah, because you're just born into a secret club and no one else can be part of that secret club. You know, like, I don't know. That would be kind of lame, I guess. If you
Well, even
if you think about
Ahsoka
it
kind of
like that.
touches on that in the episode too. She's like, where Hewing's like, oh, the Jedi wouldn't have deemed her worthy. And she's like, well, we're not running by those rules kind of thing. Like, as if the Jedi were a clique. And they kind of
Yeah.
are.
Dude, yeah,
you
they're a
know?
cult. They're their own type of thing.
Yeah.
You know, and we've seen other people be, you know, wield the Force. And we don't even know what Shin and Balin are. They're not really Sith. They're kind of their own little faction of dark side Force users. You know what I mean? And that's cool. I think that's a cool thing to explore. And you can't have that unless anyone can be, like, Force sensitive. Being a Jedi, it's a discipline thing. Also, dude, they're dogmatic. They explore this in episode 3. The more I watch episode 3, the more I love the writing in it, because Dave kind of makes you a little sympathetic to Anakin and the Emperor, in terms of them looking at the Jedi as being like thinking of themselves as better than everyone else. And you see it in Mace Windu, and that's explored more in the Clone Wars and stuff like that. Like, that's cool. The Jedi aren't infallible. They're not perfect. They're not correct in everything. So I think it's cool to have the whole Force. Like, anyone can use the Force. You know, maybe start your own. Maybe Ahsoka will start her own little Force cult of like, we do our own thing. We're not Jedi, but you know.
Maybe she's
Sith, we
in
do
this
our own
other
thing.
galaxy. Maybe she's in this other galaxy for the entirety of the sequels, and that's why she's not present in the sequels. Like, I think something else we need to talk about at some point is Dave introduced an entirely different galaxy to Star Wars, an entirely different space where things can happen. So is this like another timeline? That's another topic we have yet to explore. So I don't know, dude. I don't know. There's a lot of potential there.
A lot of comments here. Brandon Deeks, Finky Davis, Paul Hoff, loved it. People really liked it. I enjoyed it. It was a slower episode that expanded the lore in an interesting way. ESSBE 7158 says the Force may be in everyone, but I don't like Sabine being Force sensitive. I think that it weakens what Kanan and Ezra tried to help her with. Kanan, whatever. I think it makes her a slight Mary Sue, even if Filoni is smartly trying to make it a struggle. I think it's Kathleen Kennedy doing her usual nonsense. Do I like the show? I like a lot of aspects, but it's not as great a plot as Andor. Good action, and I enjoy the villains. Okay, lot to unpack there. We just talked about the Force sensitive stuff. I don't think you and I really have a huge problem with it. It just doesn't, like, exploring
not
the Sabine
unique.
aspect of it is like, that's what's weird about it. I don't care about her being Force sensitive. I don't care. It's just like, this is the Ahsoka show. Let's focus on her thoughts and feelings.
Yeah.
Let's focus on her background and like exploring her character development and progression throughout. I just don't think we need Sabine necessarily. Like, let's focus on one character, you know, to push the show along, because it is named after her. You know what I mean? And The Mandalorian did this great. In the first season, for example, the second season, they focused on Din. Like, his character arc is very interesting. He's very different at the end than he is at the beginning in both seasons. And I don't know that they've really established that in this show. But yeah, he's right. Dude, the villains in the show are great. I want more of them. I think there's some of the most fresh, it's one of the most more fresh Star Wars ideas that we've had as of late.
Now just give Balin more dialogue.
Yeah, give him more screen
Give
time.
him
Ray
some shit
Stevenson
to
is
do.
great. Yeah.
He's awesome.
Bipolar Weasel, nice name, says, I stopped watching Ahsoka after the Mandalorian chick, I think her name was Sabine, was stuck with a lightsaber. I didn't know who she was or her backstory, and at that point, I didn't realize if I cared if she died or not. To me, her death would have been as impactful as the death of the captain of the starship in the opening scene. I had no reason to be invested in her character, and the writers didn't give me a reason to care. I didn't know who Ezra was or why he was important to find. We were shown that Sabine had a bond with him, but that's all. I knew who Thrawn was because I read the books. I knew who the Night Sisters were because I had read The Witches of Dathomir as a kid. I recognized the references, but that's all. The issue is that the writers didn't explain anything. All that time spent standing around and staring could have been drastically cut down, and backstory could have been given. Someone could have been talking to Ahsoka while she was imitating Lara Croft. Flashbacks and other storytelling devices could have been used to draw on the vast majority of people who never watched the cartoons. I'm not just talking about Star Wars fans, as even among them, a large number never watched those. I'm also talking about Disney Plus subscribers who are not fans or have just seen the movies or some of the D Plus shows. The show is catered to those who are Rebels fans, which is fine if they only want a small slice of the potential viewing audience watching the show. Back to my point about Sabine, or whatever her name was, I understood she was part of a crew or group with Ahsoka because of the painting shown at the first episode, second episode of the show. I understood she and Ahsoka were friends or lovers or something. They had a connection of some kind, but it wasn't really explained. Just a lot of uncomfortable silence. They needed to hook us like The Mandalorian did, and they didn't do that. So the only thing I can do is simply not watch. If you enjoy the show, keep watching, but I'll be part of the viewership drop-off. Negative. Well,
I don't think it's unwarranted.
There.
Yeah, I think that this person's bringing up a lot of good points. That's worth talking about. I don't know if the show has created a hook as much as it could have. You know,
dude. They've now that he brings us up, the whole Sabine thing, like, dude, that thing. I don't care. People are like, oh, well, she only got stabbed in this part of her, so she'd actually be fine. Yeah. No, I don't care. That's stupid and lazy. You stab her in the first episode, and then she's fine within 2 minutes of the next episode. Mm-hmm. That means nothing. That's bad storytelling. Okay. Mm-hmm. Also, if you don't know who she is, you don't give a shit. Like this guy's saying, like, if I don't know who she is, why do I care?
Why should I care? Yeah.
And that's fair. That's fair criticism. Now, it's also fair to say if that's not what the show's meant to be, if it's not meant to appeal to other people, and it's just like a Rebels season 5, that's fine too. You know, like whatever. Like if you guys if someone's enjoying the show, great, more power to you. I'm glad you're enjoying the show. But this is fair criticism in my opinion. Like you barely touched on this Ezra guy. You've only shown him in a hologram with Sabine. And we don't really know much about Ahsoka. They haven't established who she is very much as a character, separate from Clone Wars and Rebels. So I understand why it could be hard to follow. And he brings up a good point here, where if you're a regular Disney Plus subscriber and you open up Disney Plus and you see Ahsoka, I'm going to check it out. I wouldn't be surprised if you didn't tune back in after the first 2 episodes. You'd be like, yeah, what's keeping you coming back? Like, we have to ask ourselves that question. What would keep you coming back if you hadn't seen previous Star Wars stuff? And I don't know. I don't know what, like, is it
maybe
really
the potential of Anakin showing up? I don't know.
Yeah.
There's not.
I'm enjoying it.
There.
I mean, that look, this is a fair criticism of the show. It's still a fun watch. Like, I'm not sitting here like, oh God, this is terrible. But I'm also not sitting here saying this is the greatest show of all time.
Yeah.
So we got to be honest, you know. Someone said too short. Costumes are a bit space 1999. I don't know. I think the production value is pretty good in this show.
I think the budget definitely went to this and Andor.
Yes.
So I think that these 2 shows definitely got the most money.
Yeah. I don't know what it was. I saw a comment, someone was talking the other day about how Obi-Wan like felt weirdly claustrophobic. And I think that's a really good way to describe Obi-Wan.
That is a good way to describe it.
And I feel like the shots of that planet they land on at the end of this episode, really cool. It looked awesome. Mm-hmm. You know, there's some really strong parts of this show that we haven't seen in other Star Wars shows thus far. Music is a big one. I'm not going to shut up about the music because it's I think standout of any Star Wars show we've seen thus far. Like, maybe even better than Mando in some places. The like set design stuff, it just feels like a bigger, more immersive world.
Yeah.
There's just some weird elements of it that kind of take you out of it sometimes. And like, as stupid as a criticism as this is, like the nuclear bombs that went off with the droids in the first episode was like, that was kind of weird. Like, I'm like, that doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. Ahsoka's cold demeanor towards a lot of people is also kind of confusing, and lack of context. Those are probably my biggest things. And it's not to say I'm like sitting here looking for things that are wrong with it. I'm looking for I'm looking for every reason to just love this show. And one thing that keeps getting me is like, I know that it's possible to make good content like this. Like if you look at Jedi Fallen Order, for example, the video game, that storyline I think is so good. I think it's a fantastic Star Wars storyline. And with cool, fun new characters, it feels extremely Star Wars. And I don't know that they've been able to nail down that feeling in these last couple shows. Now it's gotten better because then we have Filoni in charge of the writing and all that. And there's some just little bits and pieces here and there that I think he does a really good job on. But yeah, I think those are my overall thoughts on the show.
I think all of that is extremely warranted criticism. I mean, I retweeted something today that somebody was like, the tweet was something like, Andor was great, Ahsoka was great, Obi-Wan was great, Boba Fett was great. All of these Star Wars shows are great. You should all be positive about Star Wars. And somebody else retweeted it, and it was like, it's this exact mentality that's causing us to get the same mediocre Star Wars content.
Yeah.
And it's why we're getting a lot of the same stuff. And this guy came back and he was like, you should criticize the stuff you love. You should do it because you want to see it get better. Ultimately, it's not because you hate the thing. It's because you want to see the thing be the best possible thing that it can be. And I just really liked that. It really resonated with me, so I retweeted it because I really agree with it. It's like, yeah, I love Star Wars. I think it's awesome. There's so many great, incredible elements about it, but not all of it is amazing. Like, I'm sorry, there's so many things that are problematic in the sequels from a storytelling perspective. The prequels have a lot of flaws. The Obi-Wan Kenobi series has a lot of flaws. This has a lot of flaws. It's not perfect. Like, I'm not bashing on it because I'm like, oh, I hate it and it's horrible and I want it to fail. It's like, I'm going to call it out because I want to see it do better. And ultimately, the Clone Wars improved upon the prequels. I don't really know if the sequels are worth saving or if they're going to be saved. I don't know how you could put that together because it destroyed a lot more than it opened up new ideas. But I think criticism is warranted and you should have criticism and it's okay to criticize. And I don't think people need to get up in arms every single time somebody's like, hey, I didn't really like that thing.
Yeah,
so
I totally agree. I totally agree. But that's why we're here. And that's all, like, that's what we're doing at the end of the day. We're breaking down the good things and the bad things. And we're fair. Dude, I will stand by the fact that we are fair in our criticism.
I think so, too. Yeah.
And yes, I criticize stuff that's stupid sometimes. It's called being funny, dude. Like to make jokes sometimes.
No, Matt, everything you say is 100% serious. I can't believe you didn't like Sabine. You're such a jerk, dude.
Dude, her entrance,
why do you hate Sabine so much?
Like, people got so mad at me for not loving her entrance. It was just so try hard, dude. There's so many other ways you can introduce a character like that. And it was just like, what did she say? Like, buzz off.
I have another order. Get lost.
Yeah, get lost. Dude, that wasn't good. That was not well done. Like, it's funny. It's funny, dude.
I'll agree with you on that. Like, there's some of the dialogue in in Ahsoka so far has made me go, ooh, didn't love that.
Dude, and by the way, that is another thing where it's like, Sabine's entrance was bigger than Ahsoka's. They made a bigger deal of Sabine's entrance than Ahsoka's. And like,
that's so
far
true.
as the show's progressing, they're making her the Padawan and like her learning about stuff. And like, it seems more like the Sabine show. She's the one who got stabbed and was like totally fine and then hacked the mainframe the next day of the little data pad that they had. I don't know.
I just worry.
It would have been nice to have an entrance like that for Ahsoka, I guess. Like a cool, like, I'm a badass killing a bunch of droids or stormtroopers.
They kind of did that, but I feel like they just they didn't lean into it as much as they could have. Where I get worried is I was kind of hoping that these first 3 episodes would dig into Ahsoka's emotional state a little bit more, being like, she's still really torn up about Anakin. That's still a really hard, tormented part of her life for her. We don't even know if she knows that Anakin was redeemed or what the status is with like Luke. And again, they could show this stuff, but I just worry that all the attention, for some reason, this is a trend in Star Wars shows. Obi-Wan had Reva, and a lot of the attention went towards Reva. Yeah. They have this tendency to take the main characters of their shows and then give like this slightly more important character. And they're like, but wait, this show is actually about this person. And I'm just like, can we stick to our mains? Like, make this show about the relationship between Anakin and Ahsoka, and you can reflect that in her relationship with Sabine. But I don't think that these first 3 episodes necessarily built the foundation for that really well. Nor are they exploring it to the opportunity that they could explore it. So when we eventually get Hayden, because we are going to get Hayden, I just don't know if these moments, if these emotional beats are going to hit. because we're not exploring it enough. Like, I'm still kind of waiting for a conversation to come out with Ahsoka and Sabine, and it feels like we've already kind of solved the resolution for their problems with each other without really solving it. And I'm still kind of waiting for a conversation where they actually sit down and they're like, we need to hash out our issues. And they were like, okay, no, it's fine. I'm going to take you back on as my Padawan, and Ahsoka, I'm going to try really hard. That's it? That's all we get? I don't know. That wasn't... I just worry about getting into these beats that are coming later in the show and them just falling short. And again, I am willing to give it a shot. We have the 4th episode next week. By next week, Matt, I have a really good feeling that we're going to have a pretty solid idea of where the show is set up structurally and where we're headed, because we're only going to have 4 more episodes after next week. Yeah. So I think that's going to provide a lot of clarity for us.
Yeah, I think next week will be a good episode. I'm looking forward to it. I think will be a lot more action, more Balin bad guy stuff. I think I'm looking forward to it. Okay, I think it's going to be fun to watch. Maybe we'll do a live reaction again, guys, if my baby is not here yet. Let us know if you'd like that. Maybe you'd like the old format better. I don't know. Let us know what you guys think of the show so far in the comments. Do you love it? Do you hate it? Are you kind of on the same page as us, where we're like, there's stuff we really like and there's stuff we don't really like, and like, well, overall, we're still rating it well. I'd say, in the 7s is that's a high score. That's above average. Let us know below. Like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Check out our other reaction videos, our other breakdowns. If you're new to the channel, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. As I said, it might just be Melissa coming up here soon for a little bit. But maybe not. I don't know. Depends on when the baby comes. Depends how busy things are. Who knows, dude? I don't know what life is going to be like. But either way, we're going to continue making videos. We're going to continue watching Ahsoka. And we appreciate you guys here on the journey with us. So that being said, guys, we will see you next week for Ahsoka episode 4. For season 1, and we'll do another breakdown scene by scene, so stick with us and we'll see you then.
See you guys later.
Goodbye.
Have a great day.